We're joined now in the studio with our Human Rights Outreach Coordinator, Hadil Elkhouly. Thank you so much for joining us, Hadil.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have a great deal of experience in the various cases of persecution that have been witnessed or experienced by our members in different parts of the world. And interestingly enough, we've had news recently that this was actually picked up and documented by the US State Department in their annual report that they release on freedom of religion in global cases that happen around the world. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, so this is actually a very big deal because the US government basically years ago, they released an act called the International Religious Freedom Act. And with this law, it basically put the monitoring of religious freedom around the world as a priority in US foreign policy. So with that act, the US established two bodies. One of it is the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. So this commission, so they monitor human rights violations in regards to freedom of religion and belief. And they release all their findings on all the different countries in the world in an annual report. Now, the second body is that as part of the US State Department, there is now an office called the Office of International Religious Freedom. So they separately also monitor human rights violation in regards to freedom of religion and belief, and they also issue an annual report. Again, all of these reports have the key findings on, they have a list of countries that are put on a watch list. So these are the countries that have like the worst record of protecting freedom of religion and belief. And they document all the different types of persecution in regards to freedom of religion and belief. Could be restrictions on minorities, it could be people who are detained, it could be laws that restrict religious minorities. So they cover all of that in these reports, and then they report to the president, they report to the Congress, they report basically to the US government so that the US has these recommendations in mind for their policies in the world. So it's actually, it's more than just a mentioning in a report. It goes, these findings in the report, they go directly to the president and they influence directly the policies of the US in their diplomatic relations with countries in regards to freedom of religion and belief. So this is kind of a background about these two bodies. And the annual reports, they were recently issued for 2023. And the Ahmadi religion of peace and light was mentioned by both of them. So in the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom report and in the report by the US State Department. And it was obviously a very big deal. I mean, if we would look at the report from the United States, from the Department of State, it was actually, the launch was presented by the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. So he went out in a press conference and he announced that, you know, this report was now issued. And of course, it's a huge deal to that the release of the report is now highlighted on such a high level event by the US government.
I mean, it is quite extraordinary that you've managed to take it to this level where the Secretary of State has actually announced the name of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. And to get it to this level, you must have had to build a real portfolio of incidents around the world. Could you tell us a bit about how many countries, how many cases were involved to make it reach this level?
Yeah, but actually the Secretary of State, he didn't mention the name of the Ahmadi religion in the press release, but he basically announced that, you know, the report has now been released for this year.
And the report mentions the
religion.
religion.
The report mentions the religion.
Okay.
So actually the report by the US State Department, so again it's issued for, it was released for this year, but it was recording or monitoring the abuses of last year.
Right.
So it actually mentions us twice. So it mentions, so the report goes country by country. So it mentions us in the report about Malaysia, the country report about Malaysia, and it mentions us in the country report about Turkey.
Interesting. And we know why that's the case, looking at the incidents that have taken place recently in Turkey and in Malaysia especially.
Exactly. So Turkey, of course, it reported on the case of the 104, which was obviously a huge case, and since last year, so the 104 members of the religion who were severely beaten and arrested and persecuted by the Turkish government for exercising their right to seek asylum legally, officially with the Bulgarian border. The United Nations reported about it and asked Turkey not to deport the members of the faith, which they wanted to deport back to their home countries. So it's actually the bravery of these believers that have their voices are actually what made it, and they have made the case for themselves by holding on to their beliefs, carrying the goal of the wise, carrying the banners and marching to the border and saying, this is our belief, this is our right, we have a right to proclaim our faith in Abu Sadiq Abdullah Hashim, and we have a right to manifest our faith. And so it's them really who have made it and made the world listen to them and forced the world to listen to them. And of course, through the leadership of Abu Sadiq alayhi salam, who really made the world listen, that, you know, I will protect my followers, and I protect the members of the faith, and we will never be silenced, and we will never bow down to countries that try to silence the members. And this conviction, this confidence, this belief is really what made, you know, the US and all these governments listen to them.
That's amazing, and I love how you've highlighted the fact that it's part of our creed that was taught to us by the Qaim, by the riser of Sadiq, never to back down, and that's the bravery that took the religion's name into that field and onto that level. Can we have from you a quick comment on that? We've been talking about the riser of Sadiq through this episode, and we'd love to have from your perspective a comment on the fact that refugees have rights. He's discussed that many times. He's made statements on it, and he's vouched for the fact that they shouldn't be persecuted when they've, you know, done no wrong to anyone. Could you comment on that, and also talk a little bit about how Abu Sadiq's work in protecting his people actually led to shedding light on the corruption of these detainment centers and the way people were treated there?
Yes. I mean, if you look at the reports, this is exactly what they've covered. So we've talked a bit about the report of the Department of State. So it talked about the persecution, what happened in Turkey, and it talked about what happened in Malaysia. And in Malaysia, we've seen that there was a big wave of state-sponsored persecution, a government campaign to defame and to ban the religion online, on the street. Yes. Any form of manifesting, of stating that you are a believer in the faith. I mean, they're even now discussing ways to increase the jurisdiction of the courts so that they can actually persecute you and prosecute you even if you are outside of the country.
Wow.
For the religion. So this is how far they went. The report of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom focused on Algeria. And we were mentioned there 3 times, and it was talking about in the context of restrictions on minorities, and how there's an ongoing fatwa that declares members of the faith of the Ahmadi religion to be misguided, how people were raided while they were practicing in their homes. So they were reading the Goal of the Wise. They haven't offended anyone. They are just gathering together and worshipping and reading a book. And how even after the famous case in Bijay, which Amnesty covered, even after this case, the Algerian government is still actively monitoring members of the faith, and they are not allowed to at all publicly manifest or speak or even talk about the case. So in relation to your question, if you look at all of that, what you're seeing is governments who are hell-bent for you to never manifest your faith in Abu Sadiq, for you to never come out in public and say, I believe in this faith, even though human rights law and international conventions clearly in their articles state that the freedom of religion and belief includes your right to worship and manifest in public, or in private, or in public, alone or together. So these are conventions that these states ratified. They became part of their national laws. But it's because their enmity to the Dawah, to Imam Mahdi, they went so far that you are not allowed to post about it. So you're not allowed to write about it online in countries like in Malaysia. You're not allowed to go on the street, if we look at in other countries that happened, and you're not even allowed to practice it in your home. So of course, when you look at what all of these reports are saying and what the believers are saying, you know, of course, then you see that we flipped it completely upside down. You know, we didn't just say it in that country; we said it in the whole world. And that's, you know,
Wow.
that's Abba Sadiq alayhi salam, we're saying we will carry our faith proudly, and we will manifest, and we will, everybody has the right to, in peace, you know, without, you know, and you see the believers were peaceful. They were, missionary work is something that's in all religions.
It's a human right.
It's a human right. It's part of any religion. They carry their belief proudly. Whether it's in dictatorship, whether it's in authoritarian regimes, whether it's in countries like Iran, whether it's in countries like in Thailand, the believers, they don't care. You know, they're not scared. This is their right, and they believe in it, and they practice it, and they will never bow down to any of these regimes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Hadil. It was really amazing talking to you about this. As always, whenever we discuss these matters of having to stand for our rights or for the rights of the religion, we love bringing you on and hearing your take on it. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
today.
so much. It's an honor for me to actually bring the voices and the bravery of the Ansar and to witness this with you. So.
I think in what you've done under the guidance of Abba Sadiq, the attention that you've managed to bring to these hotbeds of kind of religious intolerance like Turkey you mentioned, the direct result of that was that the people were not deported, like you said, to their home countries. And although they had to face atrocious conditions in these detention camps, it's much better than being sent back and then persecuted in their own countries where there are much more draconian laws in place. So thank you for everything that you've done, and keep going and keep reporting back to us.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. Thank you so much. Bless you guys.